Hey, everybody. It's John Kraska, Executive Director for Every Library and the Every Library Institute. It is Thursday, February 13th. We are rounding the horn on the way to the end of a wonderful Library Lovers Week 2025. We're bringing in some wonderful authors, some editors, some illustrators, some people from the publishing industry this week to talk about some really nice big things like the culture of reading and what's it like to hang out and talk to your readers as an author. The joy of writing. We're spending some time leaning in on these very creative moments and love in libraries. Library Lovers Week is an important part of the calendar. I think right now in America, with everything going on, it's a nice thing to be able to celebrate a community anchor institution, a place that is open to everybody and is welcoming and has stuff on the shelf that you might want to read and somebody else might want to read too. The chance to be able to talk about Library Lovers Week in the face, quite frankly, of a lot of censorship and book bans that are happening around the country. Every library in my organization is a political action committee for libraries. We spend a lot of time working on making sure that the library is properly funded, that there are books on the shelves that support the whole community, and that the place is open. We're doing some big fundraising this week because it is Library Lovers Week. This is my telethon section of the program. For a donation as small as $5 a month, $3 a month even, we'd be very happy to send you a nice sticker as a thank you, and we will use that funding to help make sure that the library is there tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and for the next generation. The work that we're doing is important and impactful, and it deserves a sticker. You want to see the stickers? Here we go. Donate now at libraryloversweek.org, and you can pick your sticker. I've been told by people who like stickers that these are really cute. I see it. I mean, I do. There's rainbows and there's possums and there's good slogans like that. I don't have much of a place to put stickers myself. I haven't had my jean jacket out since the 1980s. But, I understand that you have Stanley cups now, and you can put a sticker on a cup. You $5 sticker. Let's go. All right, team. I want to introduce you to three wonderful authors who are going to spend some time with us tonight talking about the craft of writing, what it's like to hang out with their writers, and to spend a little time talking about libraries too. So I want to bring in Kathleen and Melissa and Amy and do the official intros, okay? And then I'm going to take all but one of you out in a second. Melissa Ferguson, thank you for being here. Melissa is the best-selling author of titles including How to Plot a Payback, Meet Me in the Margins, and Famous for a Living. She lives in Tennessee with her husband and children in their growing farmhouse lifestyle and writes heartwarming romantic comedies that have been featured in such places as The Hollywood Reporter, Travel and Leisure, and The New York Post. And that New York Post one, I'm old enough to be like, wow, that's a cool one. I dig that one. So Kathleen Fuller, with over 2 million copies sold, Kathleen is the USA Today best-selling author of several best-selling novels, including Heart of the Middlefield's novels, the Middlefield family novels, and the Amish of Birch Creek series. As well as, forgive me, Amy, or Kathleen, a middle grade Amish series, The Mystery of the Middlefield. All right, Amy, hi. Amy is an award-winning best-selling author and has been writing for as long as she can remember. She's sold more than 1 million books, and her fiction writing career began in elementary school when she and a close friend wrote and shared silly stories. She has a degree in communications from Virginia Wesleyan University and is a member of the Authors Guild, the American Christian Fiction Writers, and the Romance Writers of America. She works full-time for the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and lives in North Carolina with her husband, 2 sons, mother, and 4 spoiled, rotten cats. Amy, I'm going to check in with you about those cats in a little bit. I'm going to take you off screen, though, in the meantime. And likewise, I'm going to hang out here with Kathleen first. So, Melissa, we'll be right back in the green room, okay? Hi, Kathleen. How's it going tonight? Oh, you got to hit the mute button.
And I was telling myself, hit the mute button.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a real pleasure to have you here tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about So Into You and some of your writing. I also want to check in with you about well, when we bring the other writers in, I want to talk a little bit more about libraries too. So can you tell our listeners tonight a little bit about what to look forward to and what to expect from So Into You?
Well, So Into You is my latest contemporary. You mentioned a lot of the Amish books I've written. So I ventured out into contemporary romance, and it's the story of opposites attract.
Hmm.
It's a woman, a young woman. She's 28 years old, and she's a vlogger, and she has an artist channel, and she feels like she's stuck in life. So she wants to kind of go out and face the world, but she has anxiety disorder. And through her channel, she meets up with a reformed bad boy, and they kind of navigate their new goals in life. And of course, they fall in love, and there's obstacles in the way, and it has a happily ever after. I will say that.
Well, I would hope that there'd be a happily ever after. The so you've moved from what, not permanently, I would assume, but you've moved from one type of genre to another,
Yeah.
and each of those genres has their own sort of tropes and their own, the sort of a rhythm and stuff. Are you
Mhm.
finding that to be a creative opportunity for you, or you finding some friction there?
Um, I would say a little bit of both. I would say actually, let's say more of a like a creative outlet because it does stretch those creative muscles. But and then there's always, since I write romance, there are the basic tropes in Amish fiction and contemporary romance. So there's some similarities, but yet I get to like just for example, it's what I kind of always joke about is that the Amish don't have cell phones, but like anybody in my book can call somebody up for a ride in a car and they can go riding around. So it literally expands the distance that I can write within. So,
That,
but I enjoy
that's
both.
very
Mhm.
interesting, though.
Mhm.
Of course, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so but I tend to write about communities and families, regardless of whether it's Amish or contemporary. So I always have those same themes in my novels. So that makes it easy.
Yeah, for sure. So you're well known for your Amish fiction, and it's an interesting. Um, so when I was coming up in Christian publishing, and I started in the early 1990s,
Hmm.
um, I don't think I saw any Amish fiction when I was coming up. It was though we might not have had it at the store that I was doing collections in, but it's extremely popular. And it's extremely the audiences are very loyal. They're very engaged.
Hmm.
Um, do you have a favorite though from your oeuvre,
From my what?
from your work?
Oh, from my work. I thought you said something else. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, no, no. I think I have two favorites. One of them is actually a novella, and I'm a former special ed teacher. I'm retired, and so I wanted to write a character who had autism, and then he meets a woman who has a stutter, a pretty severe stutter, and it was how they overcame again those obstacles, but the obstacles of the people around them, because they loved them so much, they were afraid to just let them fly free and explore their love for each other and to be as independent as they possibly could. So that was a really, really personal story for me, and it's still one of my favorites, and I wrote it years ago. And then I've got an Amish book coming out in May, and I think it's probably my favorite Amish book because I managed to do something I've never been able to do, and that is to put a motif that goes throughout a story. And this one has a butterfly motif that ended up being very interesting. I really enjoyed my research about butterflies. And when I finished that book, I went out on my patio, and I have like a black thumb, but I always make an effort. So we did have some flowers out there. And excuse me, a painted lady butterfly, just like the one in the book, landed on the flower right in front of me right after I finished that book. So those two are the most special.
There's little moments like that are unexplainable unless you
Mhm.
pay attention, and
Yes.
I think that's a really lovely thing to hear. The stories that you write are about, as you said, their faith, their community, their family. How do you tell stories without being preachy, if I can ask? Because sometimes, if you're trying to, are you trying to tell a human story, or are you trying to tell a
Mhm.
story that has something else going on in it?
I've always wanted to write stories, and I hope I've accomplished this, that are relatable, and I think that's the important thing. So I try to make the characters as realistic as possible. They're not based on real people, um, but they're influenced, or I'm trying to think of another word for it, but they're influenced by real people. So I try to make sure that what I'm writing is very much somebody could, just drop into that story themselves and feel like they're there. And I think by making it so relatable, the preachiness, so to speak, doesn't it comes. So the faith comes naturally because the characters are natural and real.
Yeah, I mean, real people have real situations happen to them,
Hmm.
and I appreciate your perspective on that. The So with moving into a book like So Into You, where it's not necessarily it's not set in a faith community as such, but
Hmm.
it's set in the wider world. What role
Hmm.
does faith play for your characters?
Um, well, in the contemporaries, it's a little, the faith is a little more, it's even a little more natural. So the character, I don't want to spoil it because
No, no, but
the faith that is mentioned in there, the little faith thread that's in there, and I don't mean to diminish it, because ultimately it's more of a romance than my other books,
mhm.
but it's important to one of the characters, so I don't want to spoil it. But I do think that even throughout that, with the community and the family and friendships and things like that, which I think are all intertwined in our faith. So it's expressed differently than in Amish fiction, but it's still there.
You know, the hardest part about being a person is trying to live authentically, and it's, when you show up as a writer to that process. Are you are you the type of writer who plans it all out, or are you one of these people who sits down and just starts going?
Well, I used to be for years and years and years. I've been writing for 25 years. This is my 25th anniversary year,
Happy
so I'm very
anniversary
excited
party!
about that.
Yeah.
I used to just sit down and let it flow, and I tell you what, that is probably the longest way to write. But I'm not a planner. I'm not a structured person. So I've learned to kind of discipline myself so I have a happy medium. A lot of my plotting and characterization is done in my head though.
Hmm.
So when I'm working on a book, from the time I start it to the time I end it, so for those several month periods, I am stuck in that book. I am constantly thinking about it, much to the annoyance of my husband and other family members. But I mean, he's used to dealing with a writer. But so I would say it's a mix of both.
Hmm.
And I never approach a book the same way, ever. Every single time it's different.
That's interesting.
It's like every
The
single book is like in its own little universe. So,
Well, you mentioned about trying to find that motif that would run all the way through.
mhm.
Sometimes a friend of mine who has got a daughter who's an aspiring gymnast. The sometimes with a coach,
Mhm.
sometimes with a mat, sometimes no net. You gotta go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of, here at the beginning. I want to swap you out to the green room and bring in Melissa, if that's all right with
Oh, yeah.
Melissa.
Thank you.
Do it. Absolutely. Hi, Melissa. Thanks for
Hi.
hanging out, waiting. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun hearing her talk. It's always fun to hear another author's perspective on things, especially her who's done this for so long.
Well, the opportunity to talk about creativity is one of the reasons we want to host this, these kinds of conversations. Let me start with your first question, which was her last question. I mean, okay, so is it a blank page and you know exactly what's going to happen? You got the whole thing set up, or are you approaching it with some either humility or fear or excitement?
Yeah, so I remember at one of my first writers conferences, or few in, I was a timekeeper next to a woman who was an author, Shelley Shepherd Gray, and I remember asking her what she does, and anyone who'd been published was just like, to me, the coolest, most full of wisdom person in the
Hmm.
world. Whatever she was going to say, I was going to take. And she said she plots to about like, or she didn't plot. She just let it run for like 30,000 words. And then she knew where she was going and she can kind of track it down. And sure
Okay.
enough, that ended up kind of being what I do. I might do a character outline. I have an outline template. So I for sure know where I'm going to start. I think, wouldn't it be funny if, and that's kind of the premise of my plot. And I kind of have an idea where I'm going to end a little bit together. That would be the answer, and happy. And then, and then we just kind of run with it till we hit a point, and then I kind of know what's going to happen. I can jot it down.
I think that's a good process. It keeps you moving. You got a trajectory. So the Perfect Rom-Com. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about? Thank you. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what to expect from it without spoiling it too much?
Oh, sure. I'm terrible at elevator pitches, but the Perfect Rom-Com is kind of a sweet, closed door romance rom-com twist. It's a book lover's twist on 2 weeks' notice. So if you've seen that Hugh Grant.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically like a bookish 2 weeks' notice where you have an aspiring writer who has ambitious, altruistic ambitions to go save the ESL program that she has worked at that's part of her grandmother's legacy. And so she decides to go. She's written this book thinking that she can draw awareness to the program, raise funds. And she goes to her first writers conference, basically falls flat on her face, just like I did my first time. So I'm going from straight experience. And basically she meets with this literary agent who's kind of your Hugh Grant kind of character. And she ends up, he turns her down, but basically she ends up accidentally kind of correcting one of the mistakes of his current client. And he ultimately says, do you want to be a ghostwriter for someone who ultimately she becomes the ghostwriter for one of the equivalent of your Emily Henry today. If there were a villain Emily Henry. So that's what the story is about.
That's real cool. It sounds like it touches on some real life. Are you writing about yourself, or are you bringing in characters into something that you've been through yourself?
Yeah, well, I can't get whatever I'm going through or I'm passionate about or just your own life, it'll end up coming out, So last book, How to Plot a Payback, I had no intention to bring a Bernese Mountain Dog into it, but I was raising a Bernese Mountain Dog and I had a bunch of crazy chickens and they ended up in this story that, so real life comes into it. This one, definitely my very first, very chaotic pitch session. Have you been to a writer's conference before?
I have not.
Oh, it's nuts. I remember my very first time, you save up all your money, you're an aspiring author, you've spent years on this, writing the secret manuscript, hidden away,
Yeah.
And, you save up all your money and all your energy. You've queried hundreds of times. Everyone turns you down via email, right? So you're like, all right, it's time to pack my bags and be rejected in person. So you kind of get yourself set up to this writer's conference and you have basically a 15-minute, you walk into a room and you have one 15-minute scheduled opportunity to sit down with an agent or an editor, the person your dream is, who holds like the keys to your future. And they have 15 minutes where they have to listen to you. And so you're sitting at a table and there's like 20 people doing the same exact thing all around you at their tables. And it's just such a high energy, very intense moment for all these authors. So that was the opening scene of this book, and it really came from personal experience.
That's amazing. That really is. I've never been through that kind of a Shark Tank boiler room. What do you call it? Yeah. It's
very Shark Tankish, very chaotic and funny and ridiculous.
That's crazy. It is. So you mentioned before about closed door romance. I mean, do you think that there's a growing audience for closed door?
I've been surprised. I did not anticipate that. That's what I write. I write like the equivalent of like You've Got Mail. So the goal is, nostalgic, heartwarming rom-com, but it's clean, it's sweet. It's not, you were talking about Christian. I write for like the general market. I am a Christian, but I'm writing clean, sweet rom-com. And I think that, I've definitely heard various friends at big publishers and my own publishing company saying, all right, this is what is on the rise. This is what's trending. And I've seen it on my socials as well. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, a little bit of a look under the hood on it for our watchers and listeners here, because the business of publishing is both, you have a story to tell, but you have to find somebody to connect with, like you said, about the writer's kind of, bullpen Shark Tank. And then you got to find an audience. But you also have to listen to how the audience wants to be interacting with what you're doing. It's a dynamic field.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And, I don't know, as an author myself, I feel like I can't follow any trends. So I just write what's authentic to me, because if I wrote something now, sports romance, let's say that, oh no, this is on the rise. I look around me. I'm too late by the time it comes out, because it's 2 years later. So come and gone. So
that's funny. I always say that to my wife about investment strategies. If I've discovered it, we're not doing it. We're not flipping houses, because it's a bad idea.
yes.
That's awesome, Melissa. Okay, cool. Thank you for taking a few minutes with me solo. I want to bring in Amy and do the same thing, and we'll come back together. I'll put you out of the green room, okay?
All right.
You're great. Thank you. Hi, Amy. Thanks for waiting the longest.
Oh, sure. No. I'm happy to be here.
No, it's quite fun. So I want to chat with you about With This Ring a little bit, but I also have to ask you about your kidney donation memoir, if you don't mind. I know I'm sure everybody does, and I know it was a long time ago.
Oh gosh, no, I thought you were going to say the cats. That's why I started to laugh. No, oh gosh, I'm surprised.
Well,
yeah,
okay, so there's cats too. So
no, we don't have to talk about the cats.
Okay, hold on. Let's just rabbit hole this right away. I learned the other day from the internet that if you're in the UK and your dog does something, you're responsible for your dog. But if your cat does something, you're not responsible, because a cat is a wild animal that is temporarily living with you.
Interesting.
Yeah. They're cats.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk first. Excuse me. Let's talk first about With This Ring. So people are interested in what you're writing about. Can you share about the book a little bit without giving too much away?
Sure. And like Melissa, I have copies next to me. So
Awesome.
This is With This Ring. And I live in North Carolina, and I invented a small town in North Carolina. I was inspired. My husband is a big car guy, and so are my sons. So all I hear about are cars. And we were at a car show, and we were in this small town. And I was like, I need to have my own little small town, North Carolina. So I named it Flowering Grove. And With This Ring, Dakota owns the bridal shop there called Fairy Tale Bridal. And she loves to help other brides put together their dream wedding. However, she's kind of given up on love. And her ex-fiance, who was also her high school sweetheart, they broke up 7 years ago. He comes back to town. He has moved away. He sold a software company, so he's rich. And his baby sister decides that she's going to get married after only knowing a guy a couple of months. He decides, you're not going to ruin your life. So he comes back, Hudson, to stop his baby sister from getting married. And then, of course, Dakota is going to help out with the wedding. So they are thrown back together and forced to face their past and maybe realize that what they thought went wrong in their relationship wasn't actually what happened.
I mean, that sounds like it's got everything. It's a page turner, because what if they don't? But with the genre, you know that they're going to go the right direction. But what if they screw it up?
Right, exactly. It's all about the journey. You always have that happily ever after, but it's all about the journey.
Yeah, and that is true. I do like the idea of the bridal boutique owner who is jaded about love. That's like a. Does she smoke too? Because seriously,
No, she doesn't smoke, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, why would she? It's clean, So love, loss, hope. The books that you write. Is there a particular one that? I mean, sounds like a charmer, but like when you look at your work, like, as I was asking Kathleen a moment ago, what's the one that you're like, God, I really love this one. I wish I could write it again.
Actually, it's kind of funny that you brought up the kidney transplant, because Finding You is about 2 kidney transplant recipients who fall in love.
Is that right?
Yes. My editor, we were talking about ideas, we were brainstorming, and she said, have you thought about writing about a kidney transplant? And I was like, I don't know, that's just too close, because I donated a kidney for my husband so that he could get a second transplant. I didn't match him, but I gave through what's called paired donor, where I gave a kidney and he received a kidney. And so I thought, I just don't know, it's too personal. But once I came up with the characters, they told me the story, and it's actually the closest to my heart. All my books are special, but this one is really special because I poured a lot of my husband's experiences into the story. So
I have to say it caught my attention because I have a friend who long time ago, probably even before you, was a donor herself, and to a stranger. And they met over the years. They have a relationship now, and there's something to me that's just like it's captured my imagination over the years about what she did, and to be able to say thank you for having that kind of generosity yourself, that chain approach. My goodness, what a tremendous gift.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
And also putting it into a fiction framework, though, putting your life to work like that—that's pretty cool. I dig that. So when you like all of our writers tonight, I have to ask the question about process. It's not an either or sometimes. How do you approach that story? How do you get from feeling about something and putting it on paper?
Well, first I come up with a concept and write like a synopsis and then make sure my editor approves it. And then I'm actually kind of the opposite of Kathy and Melissa, because I actually plot out the whole book chapter by chapter, scene by scene, and I use it as a roadmap. The story changes, it grows, but I always know where I'm headed. And I started this process because after I wrote my first book ever, A Gift of Grace, which was my first Amish book, I dove into the second book and I hit a roadblock. I had the worst case of writer's block ever. I didn't know what to do. I was brand new. I was afraid to tell my editor. And I had another editor that I talked to, and she sent me this outline. And now I have used it for every book. And since I work full time, I'm really on a time crunch. And so plotting out the book helps me. But like I said, it's a roadmap. It changes, it grows. And of course, one of my cats is going to try to get in on that. That's 100%. Loki. That's Loki, by the way.
Loki the cat. Okay, I know what you're going for there.
And he lives up to that name too. But yeah, that's my process. And I've actually taught it to other writers. And I've said, it doesn't kill your creativity. It just helps you look at the entire story so you always know where you're headed.
Well, there is a technique. So I don't write fiction. I've never written fiction. I don't have the great American novel in me. But what I do write is a lot of policy briefs about esoteric things like tax policy in libraries. And I often take the table of contents approach, where am I looking to go with this thing? And then I just fill in the rest of the paragraphs and the rest of the chapters until I get there. And it's generative. It's creative, I think, to have some sort of, I can't pants it. I'm not that good at it.
Right. It's also saved me because if I'm working on a book and then I receive edits, the edits always take priority. So I always say it's kind of like a bookmark. I know where I left off in the story. So when I get back into it, I can be like, oh, okay, so this is where I was. This is where I headed. And also, if I've had to rewrite books, I have a timeline. And if I have to take out chapters, I'm actually going through that right now with my book that's coming out in December. And I've had to delete chapters, add chapters, and I've tried to keep the timeline. I try to keep it on track. And then I can figure out, okay, what I took out, maybe I want to put that here. So it for me, it just keeps me, it keeps me organized.
That is the craft. I think that's really awesome. Let me bring in our colleagues too for a little bit more chatting, if that's okay. Kathleen, Melissa, we'll pull you out of the green room. All right, that's great. So I do have an Amish fiction question, and I know that not all of you have written Amish fiction here, but is it research or is it personal? Like, did you drive it? Did you get into it by because you were fascinated by the community or interested in the community, or how did you get to know the Amish well enough to write about them for so often? I mean, if I can ask.
Amy, you want me to take this?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, for me, I lived in I lived in Geneva, Ohio, which is about 40 minutes from Middlefield, Ohio, which is the 4th largest Amish community in the country. And so back when Amish fiction was just breaking out, my agent at the time, she had asked me if I'd be interested in it. And it was really, I'm from Arkansas, and actually I live there now, but I didn't know Amish or anything. And then when we moved to Ohio, we went to Amish country. So it was like culture shock to me a little bit. But we also had a subsistence farm. So we were raising cows and chickens. And my husband had this huge garden because he does have a green thumb. So it was, for me, it was personal. It was professional as well, because it was nice to get in on a, a new genre that was just breaking out.
Mhm.
But it was also personal, which really made it easy and very interesting for me to do my research. And I made a friend in Middlefield, and she vetted a lot of my early books. So for me, it was a bit of a mix.
That's really interesting. Amy, how about you?
Oh, okay. For me, it was the same start as Kathy, where my agent suggested it. And then my father was a German immigrant, so I always kind of felt a loose connection to them. And then it was just kind of meant to be. My husband, his first kidney transplant was failing, and he was going back on dialysis, and I was trying to get published. And then my agent made the suggestion. I met somebody through an online writing group who grew up in Lancaster. Her mother had an Amish friend. Next thing I knew, I was on my way there meeting her mother and my Amish friend, who's still my friend today. And my friend who lives in Gordonville, Pennsylvania, we keep in touch to this day. She answers all my questions. Nothing is off limits. I go to visit her. She has given me ideas for books. So it was just kind of meant to be, and came at the best time when my husband was sick and couldn't work full time. And the books helped me spiritually, and also helped our family keep a roof over our head while he was sick.
Yeah. There's a bit of grace there. And what a joy to meet those new friends, too.
Yes, absolutely.
For both of you. So, Melissa, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I don't remember in your biography if you've got any Amish fiction, though. Forgive me.
No, I have not.
That's all right. Don't worry. So I want to ask a follow-up question to you and to the group. You mentioned about being a Christian, and but that you're not writing Christian fiction. Do you look at writing, and the three of you, I'd love to hear what you think, because do you look at writing as a career or as either a vocation or a calling even?
Well, I don't know. I would say I don't think of it.
I don't mean to put you on the spot like that, Melissa. I apologize.
No, you are fine. I don't say I would think of it as a career. I think of it more as a calling, because I don't technically need to. I homeschool 4 children, but and my husband works, and it would be fine if he was the only one who worked. But I definitely fell in love with writing, and have not been able to stop since. So
that's a wonderful thing.
Vocation. Yeah.
Yeah, I dig that. Do either, I put Melissa on the spot. Do either of you mind sharing about this?
Mine is a ministry for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I went into it as a ministry because I was a teacher, but I also homeschooled my kids early on.
Mm-hmm.
So I started reading Christian fiction, and at the time I was just asking God how there was a way I could serve Him, expand my territory as a stay-at-home homeschooling mom. But I fell in love with Christian fiction, and then I was like, I think I'd like to try writing this. I mean, that's a God thing, because, I never thought about being a writer. I in high school took a journalism class, and that didn't work out. And then it just kind of went from there. I learned how to write, but it was always, and it still is for me, a ministry. I was a full-time writer for a while after I retired. So it ended up being a career, but it's always been a ministry for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing it.
I would say both for me. Writing kind of chose me. It was something I always had inside me. And then I was grateful that my agent led me to Christian fiction, even though I am a lifelong Christian. And it's really both, because it's very fulfilling, especially when somebody reaches out to me and says that their books helped them through a hard time. Or I just had somebody just a few days ago email me and say that she was considering becoming a kidney donor and found my memoir in her church library, and now she knows she's supposed to do it. And I'm
wow.
Wow. I mean, I'm so grateful that God is using our story that way. So, but it's also a career, I guess, because I love it so much. I can't imagine not doing it. So I think I enjoy both the career and the fact that it's a ministry.
Yeah, you have to. Those are all very, very honest and authentic responses. I appreciate all three of you for sharing that with me. And for me to set up a question like that is to create artificial lines that might not exist. So thank you for telling me about that. Homeschooling and libraries. I want to check in with you about both. I have a great deal of appreciation for homeschool parents and homeschool families, and look at my experience when I was on I'm not a librarian. Okay, I'm not a librarian. I've never been a librarian. I don't have a degree in library sciences. I've never worked in a library. I often say that I really don't like children very much. I don't. I'm awkward around them. Kathleen was a teacher. I admire that. The reason I do library work is because they do some things that I think are important in the world. And one of those important things in the world that I think that they do is that they help families who want to homeschool have the resources that they need and a place to go to. And it's something that I knew when I was doing Christian retail back in the early 90s, and I knew it again in the early 2000s in the mid 2000s when I was on my library board and seeing the families in my community who used it. I don't know what it's like right now for libraries and homeschooling after the pandemic. I know that a lot of libraries shut down for the pandemic, and it was difficult sometimes for homeschooling families to interact with their libraries. And I really feel like we need to start building a new bridge. But I don't know. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth about that. Melissa, what are you thinking?
Oh, man. Well, we literally, you know what? I didn't mean to pull this, but so meet me in the margins. In the back of it, I have our literal children's librarian featured in the back of it.
Is that right?
In a scene, because Miss Michelle's awesome and we love them and we're hardcore involved in our library.
Awesome.
And I had them there and experienced the pandemic, and it was like literally COVID for us was fine. Well, except for an almost near death experience. Aside from that, it was fine. Except how often I missed the library. It's shutting down, and their programs that we went to every single week, every single summer, that was very hard. But I feel like they've come back, at least my personal experience, and they're so great. It's like, wow, it's almost like you can't remember kind of the time where I was like, oh, and then we're all back, and it's just so special. So I don't know.
Well,
we're a part of several huge homeschool groups and co-ops, and everyone I know, of like the 200 families in my area, they're like hardcore about the library.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm not suggesting there's a deficit, but I have been wondering about how are we building back up that set of relationships? Are we showing up the right way for the homeschool community? I'm really glad to hear that. Your librarian is in your book even. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, they're great. And they're so good about, at least in my library and the several ones around us, they're so good for homeschooling. Like they up our card to 40 a month checkouts. The standard is 20, and that includes my kids. So I feel like we can get so many bazillion books if we want to. They did so good. And I don't know if it's nationwide where they drop the fees for returning it if you're late.
It's happening in a lot of places. Yeah. It's
changed my life. They were like, Melissa, this law passed and we had to tell you first. We knew you would appreciate it. And I was like, thank you so much.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I love it.
That's real cool.
I just want to add a little thing. And my kids are adults, so it's been a long time since I've homeschooled them. But they still have memories of me taking them to the library and going to those programs. And they're in their late 20s and early 30s. And I used to pack my kids up. Like I had a trailer I'd put on the back of my bicycle, and I'd put 2 of them in there, and I would ride to the library. And this was when we lived in North Olmsted, Cleveland, which was on the west side of Cleveland.
Okay.
So that was pretty awesome and they were having a library close, and they had so many wonderful programs. So those are some of my good memories too, of being there with my kids for story time and other things. And so it's, it's important now, but then when your kids get older, they'll be thinking back on those things. And, so you're creating memories on top of everything else.
Well, you're very brave. I'm going to put up the donation link too, since we're talking like this. You got your trailer with your kids, and then you got the weight of another kid with books back there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
That's fantastic. I love it. So,
when I was young, I could do stuff.
Yeah. Amy, do you have a library or librarian kind of story like that?
I did not homeschool my kids.
Okay.
But I remember my mom taking me to story time, and I have a very vivid memory of running through the stacks with her while she was picking out books for herself in the adult section in our town library in Ridgewood, New Jersey, where I grew up. So I do have a lot. And actually, my first job was working at a library when I was in high school.
No, it wasn't.
So
What were you doing?
It was. And my dad always thought it was funny because I was a page in the library. And if you wanted magazines, I would go down to the magazine room and I would find if you need Life magazine from June 5th, 1946 or whatever, I would go down and find it and bring it up. So I was a page in the library. Yeah.
The way you just did the air quotes, you know what? I've heard that term for 50 years, or 40, whatever, however old I am. And the idea that it's the page of like a book.
Right. And
Until you did that, I've never heard that before.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. My dad said.
We learn something new every day, don't we?
Yeah.
You've all been absolutely wonderful today. I've taken a lot of your time, but you've also been very generous sharing about your books, about your vocation, your calling, and libraries a little bit too. I really appreciate that very much. So let me come around the horn and do my official thank yous to Kathleen Fuller, author of So Into You, available where books are sold and browsed at libraries. Melissa Ferguson, the Perfect Rom-Com. Appreciate you very much. And Amy, with this ring, I'm very grateful to you all. So I'm going to do my final commercial. I want to hold you all in the green room for a minute. Folks, again, it's Library Lovers Week. Stickers for donations. The opportunity to do $3, $5, $7, $10 donation. Here at every library, we put it to work on making sure that libraries are open tomorrow like they were yesterday for all these wonderful writers and their families. So libraryloversweek.org. We're wrapping up tomorrow with 3 more wonderful conversations. Thanks to you all for being part of it. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.